In this session, we shall know few more important details about the life of Khalil Gibran, the struggles of his personal life, the struggles of his publications, the struggles of his career and professional life, as well as the struggles when it comes to his the core of his being, the core of his personal life, and some of his remarkable works and publications. Okay, so in continuation with what we were discussing previously, in 1904 in Boston, Khalil Gibran's drawings were showcased. They were kind of shown in the exhibition. Okay, and during this exhibition, when in 1904 in Boston, when his paintings, very famous paintings, were exhibited, he met his soulmate, the love of his life and soulmate, Mary Haskell. Okay, Mary Haskell was supposed to be his soulmate and a very good friend and lover as well, but who, not just being this, above all, they shared a kind of platonic love relationship. Okay, they did not share any physical relationship, love at the level. They did not share love at the face of physicality, but they did share a kind of platonic relationship. Okay, and who was this Mary Haskell? She was the headmistress of a girls' school in the city. Okay, and she was elder to him by 9 years. Okay, and these two, Khalil Gibran and Mary Haskell, they formed a very strong bonding, very strong friendship that lasted for the rest of his life. Okay, that lasted throughout the life. Okay, then Haskell had been of great financial support and help to Khalil Gibran, and also she in the future would edit all his English writings. Okay, basically he was very good at Arabic. Khalil Gibran used to write in Arabic, and it was with the help of Mary Haskell that most of his English writings were edited. Okay, and the nature of their romantic relationship, as I said, it remains very obscure and very strange. Okay, and some of the biographers indeed of Khalil Gibran, they indeed claim and assert that these two were lovers, but they were never married. Okay, of course they were engaged for a year between 1910 and 1911, officially engaged, but it is said that they never consummated their relationship physically. Okay, so it was a kind of platonic love and platonic relationship, and a very kind of what do you say, friendship without any expectations, a very selfless kind of mutual love and obligation. Okay, so then Khalil Gibran had, proposed to Mary Haskell, and he elsewhere states that he had proposed to her not knowing how to repay back in gratitude to Miss Haskell. Okay, and and Haskell in turn made it very clear to him that she preferred his friendship to any burdensome tie of marriage. So, this was Miss Haskell's view about Khalil Gibran's friendship with her, okay, which was again platonic in nature. Okay. Then Haskell later married Jacob Florence, okay, in 1926, while Khalil Gibran remained to be her very close friend. Okay, they remained kind of bosom friends. Okay, though they were never engaged or married. Then she continued to be his kind of a patroness and his benefactress when it comes to money, especially financial assistance. She helped him a lot. Okay, and in 1905, Gibran's first published written book, okay, was a profile of the art of music in Arabic. It was published in New York. Okay, the next work which was published was Nymphs of the Valley. Okay, and that was also published in Arabic. Then later on in 1908, Haskell introduced Gibran to her friend writer Charlotte Teller. Okay, and and she also introduced him to Emily Michel, a French teacher. Okay, then they together decided that they would pose for Gibran as models, and all three of them became very close friends. Okay, then the same year in 1908, Gibran also published the another work in Arabic called Spiritus Rebellius. Okay, and it is one of the novel which is deeply critical of spiritual authority. Okay, it criticizes spiritual authority and dictatorial style of any kind. Okay, uh, then you have that due to with the help of Haskell's financial support in 1908, Gibran could go to study at Paris again. Okay, then there actually he joined atelier of Jean Paul Laurens, okay, in Paris. Then something interesting happens in Khalil Gibran's life in June 1910 when Gibran visited London um, with Amin Rihani, okay, whom Gibran had met in Paris. Then Rihani was, Amin Rihani was 6 years older than Gibran, would be Gibran's kind of role model. Okay, Amin Rihani became his role model and a very close friend, a best friend until at least May 1912. Okay, then as Gibran's one of the biographers, Robin Waterfield, argues in 1918 that as Gibran's role changed from that of angry young man to that of prophet, Rihani could no longer act as a paradigm. Okay, so this is claimed by his biographer. Okay, then in 1926, another famous work of Gibran called Sand and Foam was published, and Jesus the Son of Man was published in 1928. Okay, and at the beginning of 1929, Gibran was unfortunately diagnosed with an enlarged liver. Okay, then later on, the last book published by Gibran in his lifetime was The Earth Gods. It was published on 14th March 1931. Okay, then Gibran was admitted to St. Vincent's Hospital in Manhattan on April 10th, 1931, where he died the same day when he was aged 48. Okay, then he refused the last rites to be performed on him, and the cause of the death was reported to be cirrhosis of liver with also incipient tuberculosis. Then and one another biographer of Gibran argues that cirrhosis of liver was contracted during the excessive drinking of alcohol and was the only real cause of Gibran's death. Okay, and there are these interesting lines written on Gibran's epitaph. Okay, the tombstone that he writes. He wanted these lines to be written on his epitaph. They read like this: the epitaph I wish to be written on my tomb. I am alive like you, and I now stand beside you. Close your eyes and look around. You will see me in front of you. Okay, these were the lines Gibran wrote himself before his death, and he wanted these lines to be written on his epitaph. Okay, and he also had expressed his last wish that he should be buried in Lebanon. Okay, and his body lay temporarily for some time at an cemetery in Boston, and finally on July 23rd, it was taken to Providence, and from it was brought to Lebanon. Then Gibran's body reached his birthplace, Bishari, in Lebanon in August, and it was deposited in a church nearby until a cousin of Gibran finalized the purchase of the monastery, and now it is turned into Gibran Museum. Okay. Um, then you can, if you browse about it elsewhere, you can also find kind of the images of Gibran's epitaph, his the museum which is named and dedicated to him. Okay, and in 1950, his soulmate, his platonic lover Mary Haskell, donated her personal collection of nearly 100 original works of art by Gibran to Telfair Museum of Art, okay, in Savannah, Georgia. Okay, and Haskell had been thinking of placing her collection at Telfair as early as 1914. Her gift to the Telfair is the largest public collection, okay, ever of Gibran's visual art in the country. Okay, so that would be all. So I think we had elaborate and quite filling information about Khalil Gibran before we could take on to study his poetic prose, which comparatively sounds very simple, but it's very philosophical and it's very comprehensive in nature.